Hi all, it's Emily Rand, and I'm here to welcome you to. We had the Making the Rounds version of the LPL Corner with Kelsey, and now we have Tea of Legends version with Ashley Kang. For those people that don't know, whenever we're at international events, we do a show together called Tea of Legends, which is just us talking about League of Legends teams. And Ashley is here to help me preview the midseason cup. This is going to be slightly more focused on the LCK teams, only because we've gone through a lot of the things that I've said about LPL teams on previous shows. So I don't think my analysis is going to be too surprising on any of them. So I'll try to keep that as quick as possible so that Ashley can share her wisdom on all things LCK. So first of all, just thank you so much for joining me. This is really exciting. I miss you so much. I miss Korea so much.
Oh, and thank you for having me. You are greatly missed here at South Korea and Seoul, but excited for the show and also excited for the mid-season coming up in only 5 days.
I know. So, we were making plans together for MSI, and obviously that did not happen. So I was really happy when the initial, I guess, I don't want to like credit Joe for starting this, but I don't know how much he actually had a hand in bringing this together. But when the initial tweets came out, being like, "Yes, let's have a friendly match between LPL and LCK." I think what they're doing with the artificially raised ping is really interesting, so I'm curious to see how that works. So let's just dive into Group A. I'm gonna leave T1 for last because I feel like we both have a lot to say about them. So let's start with Damwon. Um,
Mm.
how would you characterize this year's Damwon gaming for someone who might not have seen them since Worlds last year?
I would say that they actually haven't changed too much, except for the early part of the spring split where they actually lost a bit of an aggression. When we look back to Diamond Gaming last year, and when we look at Diamond Gaming during 2019, we think of very, very strong top side, especially Nuguri when he's on carry champions, as well as Showmaker with this very, very diverse champion pool. We already, I think a lot of community has been aware that Showmaker has been able to climb to the challenges in the Korean solo queue playing
Mm-hmm.
one champion each. So there is no doubt about this man's champion pool. The boss side continues to be a relatively weak link for Diamond Gaming, even though they have swapped out Nuclear and favoring Ghost in the most recent matchup. They still continue to play around the lane with Kenyon playing very aggressively, activating each of the lanes. Sometimes emotional macro or objective calls are another characteristics of that one, and I think this version of that one will continue to see in the mid-season cup. And I do have quite high hopes for them, even especially given that Ghost might be the what Diamond Gaming has been needing, given that
Mm-hmm.
Ghost has been known as a strong shot caller even back in Sandbox, and this very directional voice is what Diamond Gaming may have needed. But I'm curious, especially what you think about Diamond Gaming versus FPX or TS.
So, I don't want to spend too much time focusing on FPX because FPX comes up like every single show. And I think like to boil it down, I think that simplifying their issues to just a Gimgoon versus Khan thing is like a very large oversimplification of a lot of the problems this team has had. Um, I think they're still trying to play like a very specific play style. In the current meta, it might work a little bit less be like it might be a little bit less successful just because I think as the meta has evolved and going into this tournament, I have the sinking suspicion that we're going to see teams play a lot more bot lane focused. And although I don't think LWX deserves the massive amount of criticism he received after the J team, like there was like that one game, right? And everyone was like, wow, LWX is absolutely trash. And it's like, no, that's not actually the case. Um, I think he's fine. Like I think he has like some really really high impressive mechanical moments, and then I think other times Crisp really has to save him. Um, I think the big thing for FPX with me is that Tian underperformed. I think against Damwon, the big thing is going to be their their top side versus the FPX top side. And the FPX top side is the thing I'm the shakiest on, just because I feel like teams have been able to attack that, be it Gamgoon or Khan. They both have different weaknesses and strengths, but I think teams have been able to actually target both of those by focusing top. And then top esports, I'll just go ahead and say, because I'm not going to spend too much, again, I want to talk to you more about the LCK teams, but top, I think they're actually my favorite, like after thinking about it a lot, they're my favorite LPL team to win this. Um, and I think that they with more time practicing with Jackie Love, I think they can be an incredibly strong team, especially in this meta. I think we see some pretty smart things from them at times. I think we see some not so smart things from them at other times. So also, I think that could be helped by the fact that again, Jackie Love, to similar to Ghost, he's known for having like a very strong voice. I think you'd probably have to have a strong voice if you're on IG at any point in time. But I think on a team like Karsa, on a team with Karsa, someone who's been known to benefit from having a really strong voice, I think he's a great asset to this team. I think I would actually see weirdly enough for people that are probably higher on FPX than I am. I would see top beating Damwon, but I think Damwon might be FPX at this point. I think FPX have some major issues, especially in this meta.
Hmm. If I remember correctly, the Diamond Gaming actually went against IG at the 2019 Revivals, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
should
Diamond
have.
actually managed to beat IG. This is the same team that Tess is at the moment. So I have a lot of respect for Jackie Love as an AD carry, and I do think the bot lane matchup favors TS. But given that Nuguri and the Showmaker has a wow factor, and we haven't seen them yet in the current patch, and I don't even know, we might even see Nuguri on something crazy like Fiora. I would favor TS slightly over Diamond Gaming, but I would also say that there is a decent tangible possibility that Diamond Gaming might actually upset FPX or TS.
I think the big thing with TES is Knight is an incredibly talented player, and I think a lot of their issues in the finals came from the two things. One, they did that really smart swap to put him top lane, but he very obviously didn't know how to play the long lane. So unlike, for example, Chovy, who we'll talk about later, who we've seen actually had a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
Knight was really, really uncomfortable in that position. So
Mm.
that affected their performance. And additionally, they didn't really know how to play around his Lysandra. I actually think Knight, in the past, has shown that Lysandra is a good champion. Like, he can perform really well.
Mm.
But it also, she depends so much on team coordination. So I think that
Mhm.
was another thing. I'm actually not super worried. I have a lot of confidence in TS's top side actually. The big thing with them is how does Karsa get involved, and that I'm still shaky on with this team.
Mm.
Let's move on to probably tournament favorites. The team that everyone is talking about, I think, as the best team in the world right now,
Mm.
T1. I mean,
Okay.
that's what everyone I've talked to is saying. T1 definitively the best team in the world after looking at LPL finals versus LCK finals.
Okay.
So talk to me about T1.
Okay, so if I had to describe T1, they're all rounders. All the lanes have very strong carry potential. I don't even need to go into details about Teddy. He's like super consistent, extremely reliable damage dealer, and Faker. We always know him for ability to play a variety of champions for a variety of different matchups. He can play like Azir, and then I'm gonna camp in this mid lane until like 20 minutes and start calling for team fights. He can play Akali, a more assassin type champions, and Kana. I think I've talked about Kana in a few different interviews where I mentioned that I was very impressed with his growth throughout the
Mm-hmm.
split. That in the solo queue when he was a trainee, he was more known for Irelia. Irelia was his solo queue signature pick. He was like a super aggressive top laner, but as he moved into T1, he's become a very reliable team player as he has shown great performance on both tank champions such as Orin as well as the carry champions such as Jay. So this is like an all-rounder team, and I was also impressed with drafting decisions that T1 has been making. They always get a very consistent drafts with a very
Hmm.
large window of win condition, which I think is like other teams fall into the trap of, hey, this is a very, in theory it should work, but they have a very narrow win condition in terms of like, oh, we can only win if they become super aggressive when the AD carry has a power spike on a 25 minutes, or I'm not sure. But so T1 has the good players, T1 has a good team balance, T1 has very smart drafting decisions. So I do like them, and I'm personally really excited about T1 versus FPX too. If Khan decides to start for FPX, which I'm not sure just yet. Kana has always mentioned Khan as his role model, but given that, like, I think going back to T1 overall, I think they have a really great teamwork. Like, I don't see major flaws in them, so it's really difficult to like put a hole in what the team T1 is. So I will agree with you in your statement that I do see T1 as the tournament favorites, as well
I
as
mean,
Group A.
I think the big thing with FPX is that they just haven't been performing as well as we've seen them perform in the past. And I think one thing that I do want to reiterate, because people seem to forget it, even over the course of the One Worlds tournament, right? Like we started from FPX are going in despite the fact that they're first seed. Everyone who had watched the LPL was like, I don't know how this team's going to do actually.
Mm-hmm.
To that J team game where everyone's like, oh god, they're gonna int everything away and they're gonna be out of the tournament before groups, and then to them winning the final. I think you really were able to see the evolution of FPX perfecting their own play style and really getting comfortable with in their own skin. I think to some degree that has been lost this split for a few reasons. One, the top lane swaps, and then two, I don't think Tian has been performing as well as he has previously, and going up against T1 is going to be really difficult for them because ideally, if they were still performing at their best, right? Like if they were, if I was looking at how they were playing in the World Championship finals, right? Where everything's clicking and they have this really, really strong identity of, Doinby shoves the wave and he roams, and we have this three-man roaming squad of Tian, Crisp, and Doinby. Because it's not like this team plays around topside either, right? They don't over focus top typically. And that is something that shifted a bit sometimes with Khan, but I think the main difference with Khan is actually more that his team fighting is teleporting. And then I brought this up off call, but as my friend said, if there's a juicy wave in the side lane, Khan's going after it, probably not paying attention to what else is going on the
Yeah.
map. And these are not new things with Khan, right? Like that's the double-edged sword that he is. Like insanely mechanically talented, excellent laner, can take over an entire game. The downsides are all of these things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
So I think right now, based on their performance, I think they do not do well against T1 at all.
T1.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think if it had been a slightly different meta, and they had been performing a lot more cohesively in spring, I would feel differently because I actually think that their play style is like could be pretty strong against what T1 typically like to do, which is have um, a kind of not like weak side bot because it's not due to picks. It's just kind of how they play around it, right? Like they typically leave their bot laners to kind of chill, and either have their jungler farm or go top or mid for Faker and whoever is topside. And this is kind of the quintessential T1 style that I think of from previous splits. I think they played it really, really well this past split, actually. And that's where Kana comes in as kind of a really crucial piece of how this team has worked out so well. Um, so yeah, that's the long and short of why I think like definitely in this group, I think T1 comes out on top. Um, the big question for me is how well Top Esports can perform because I actually am higher on them getting out of this group than I am on FPX based on their
Or
recent
Damwon.
performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Damwon. So yeah, that's my group A assessment. Like if all goes according to plan and all of these teams are kind of performing like at their top level, I think it's still T1 and top esports coming out
Yeah.
ahead.
Because I would also agree that one matchup that everyone should look forward to in Group A is T1 versus TES, and I draw real parallels between them because these are the two teams where all the laners are extremely strong and they can excel when they are allowed to play the more standard comp. And obviously, I will be very hyped about the mid laner matchup, which is Faker versus Knight, given
Mm-hmm.
that Faker is like 3 times world champion and Knight is the best mid laner who has never won a championship. But I think T1 would be able to go toe to toe against the brute force of individual laner that TS has. And I do think that T1 has better macro decisions. So I would say that T1 comes out favorite on that particular matchup.
Yeah. So we're gonna move to. I do want to keep things moving, so we only have 40 minutes. I'm gonna move to Group B,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really interesting group for a few reasons. One, when I look at a lot of these teams, I think it's really interesting how they use their or like in my opinion, from the LPL, we have two teams that when I look at them this past split, I see more two like top or solo lane focused teams. And when I look at how Gen G more specifically want to play, it's typically through bot side. With Dragon X, it's a bit weird because we've seen them go full solo lane focus. I actually think that Chovy has really impressed me this year more than any other year. Like when people were talking about his KDA and his strong mid lane performance last year, I thought he was missing a lot in terms of roam timing, in terms of back timing, in terms of coordinating with his junglers, general map awareness, pretty much everything but like the individual 1v1 matchup. And I think this split I mentioned it previously when I was talking about Knight's uncomfortable, how visibly uncomfortable he was in the top lane. Chovy, we've actually seen him perform really well in a similar situation. So this is someone who has become an incredibly versatile player. And on top of that, he still has the strong laning that we knew him for. From previous years and from his time on Griffin. So I do want to start with Dragon X because I know you have some other things to say, especially about Genji's drafting in the finals. So how would you specifically describe Dragon X and their play style?
So I agree with you that we have always known that Dragon X is stronger at the bot side. Yeah. Doran has been hyped up ever since he moved from Griffin to Dragon X, but he hasn't shown like the ceiling breaking performance that we have expected him to, except for like this Irelia game now and then. And I think he still suffers from inconsistency. And Pyosik, I think he did deliver per expectation. People didn't put faith on Pyosik when he was first a streamer, and then 1 month later he was suddenly like a starting jungler for Dragon X. And despite those like low expectation, I think he has performed well. But I think Pyosik still has some like macro slash objective contestant slash jungle pathing decision errors, especially in the early game. And I think a lot of them aren't that visible because the individual laners, especially Chovy and
Mm-hmm.
Deft, are so strong in Dragon X, which might get cannibalized by other junglers on this group, such as Kanavi, who is extremely a smart jungler, as well as Clid. But given that, I am reminded by the fact that the last time the Genji went against Dragon X, Dragon actually came out on top. And I think, as you mentioned, the meta shift towards more solo laner style might actually benefit Dragon X, put
Mm-hmm.
less load on Kosik's shoulders. So I would actually say that Dragon X is quite a high favorite.
They're actually
In
my dark horse pick to win everything,
mm,
just based on like how they can adapt to this meta. Um,
mm-hmm.
Based on the fact that I like initially going in, I was really unsure about this team actually. Despite the fact that they were a really exciting team to watch for me because of Pioshik and because of Kyria, because I just wanted to see how they do, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
rookies are always super exciting
Yeah.
to watch. Um, and this team has really surprised me with how they
Mm.
can play through multiple lanes. Because initially I thought, okay, this might be one of those cases where if things don't work out, we're going to see Deft in another situation where he's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this team, right? And they're going to have to focus bot side. And that is not the case. But
Yeah.
the important thing is, in a more bot lane focused meta, they can. And Deft is such a reliable and incredible carry, and we've seen him perform well, to kind of your point, not only on some standard picks, but also some mage picks as well.
Mm.
And that is something that I feel like he has an advantage of in this group, specifically. And I think this could be like a situation where we see Dragon X actually coming out on top of this group, because IG and JDG. I love JDG, first of
I
all.
love Lady too.
I
Yeah.
picked them to win finals. I do think, though, that they are a lot more topside focused.
Mm.
Um, and so evening out how they're going to spread that strength around the map, especially with drafting around Kanavi, because I think the big important thing for this team is that Kanavi is such an insane carry for them, right? There's a reason why you don't want to let him get like the Graves, for example. Kindred, another pick that we think of when we think of Kanavi, like something where he can really like sit back and perform insanely well in team fights as a carry. Um, and I am a little bit, despite the fact that they performed a bit better than I expected in finals, but I'm a little bit concerned about their bot lane. I think if JDG want to go far in this tournament, they should definitely try to take advantage of not only that they have, in my opinion, still the best top laner at this tournament by like a significant margin. I think really highly of Zoom. I also think that they can take advantage of Lu Mao and a lot of his kind of weird uh,
Bard.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
I mean the bard, yeah, but like he also has a fiddlesticks, which I actually wouldn't recommend pulling out right now. But I do think they can take advantage of the fact that he has been performing really well, again above
Mm.
my expectations. So, and then IG, I
uh,
have no idea. Like I have no idea. Our notes, by the way, Ashley and I like prep notes were like, okay, what do we want to like quickly brief on for like analysis of these teams? And our notes for IG are just LMAO.
la 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 la
Yeah,
la
yeah. I
la.
think the most frustrating thing about IG is that like if you go forward in time and like future Emily tells me, oh yeah, like IG really pulls it together and they just win this tournament, and Ning goes off and he's constantly in lanes and they fix all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, of course they did. Like, are you kidding me? Of course they did. But I think we saw an IG that's really struggling with how they want to play, and their team identity, because it was previously always really focused on red side counter picks, super strong pushing lanes, and with Leon being more of a farming jungler than like
Ning.
super lane focused jungler like Ning, where he is just in lanes, I think a lot more quicker, or a lot more quickly. I think that has kind of upset a bit how they want to perform. And when we see those laners not performing well, like
Mhm.
the Shy had two, like back to back, two of the worst individual performances I've seen from him in the LPL finals, and then or in the third fourth place match, and in his semifinals rather. It was rough. It was really really rough.
Mhm.
And for IG to succeed, both Rookie and the Shy need to be performing really really well, especially since Puff and Southwind just aren't there yet. Like I think they're both insanely talented. I think they slotted onto this team really well. but they're not there in terms of the laning prowess that you would want from them and that you kind of had with Jackula Bowlen. With that, you have like an 80 carry that's a lot better, but then Bowlen is, it kind of evens out in a weird way. So I honestly have no idea how IG are going to do, but based on their prior two performances, I don't have a lot of high hopes. I am aware that they have the talent. That's always been the issue with IG. Um, Moving on to Genji. Let's talk about their final against T1 because I think one of the reasons why people think that T1 is looking so strong is because they went in and they absolutely obliterated Genji in the finals.
So we talk. Okay, so I do have some points about JDG and IG, but I'll
Oh
actually
yeah,
skip over
no,
them.
go for it.
Okay, I'll talk about Genji first. Some insights on why Genji failed in drafts during the finals. Actually, this is actually public info because Genji actually published like post-mortem video of the finals on the official YouTube channel, and it seems like one of the most heavily criticized part of Genji's drafts during the finals was that they weren't banning Barris, even though Barris is a very, very contested pick in this meta. We have always known Teddy as a very good Barris player, and when Barris, especially when it's allowed to go on their poking item route, the building route, like he is such a menace. And when talked to Genji players, they simply said, "Hey, we had good scrim results," um, which is justifiable because I always know that the Koreans team to place more like weight on their scrim result compared to other regions, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, that makes me question about Genji's flexibility. Of course, I look at the raw prowess of individual laners in Genji. BDD is the MVP of the regular split for the LCK, amazing mid laner with quite a diverse champion pool. He can play Azir while Dragon X Chobi. Chobi can play Azir, but not as good as BDD perhaps. Like Ruler is always a very consistent bot laner, but I wonder if they can drastically shift up their playstyle and like match their draft into indi- to cater for individual teams, especially now that this is not just an LCK tournament, but also
Mm-hmm.
we have LPL, we have super high aggressive, chaotic IG coming in. We have very like more jungle carry focus, which is quite a unique playstyle of JDG. So how will Genji adapt to all these different types of LPL teams, especially given that Genji has just parted ways with its head
Yeah.
coach Edgar? So I see the building blocks for success in Genji, but especially given the recent coaching changes, I don't know whether they can adapt fast enough to a new meta, to a new patch, new meta, and facing all those like LPL teams in the MSC. So I would actually put Dragon X or JDG in favor of Genji. That's my controversial opinion.
This is the group that I have like a really tough time calling because like looking at the meta right now in Group A, I'm just like, yeah, it's T1, it's TES, FPX. I'm sorry, your performance this past split does not lend itself to me believing in you. But with this group, it's so hard. Um,
Yeah, I
Genji,
guess.
I am really curious to see if their draft strategy changes with Edgar because I think Edgar had a really specific kind of defined play style that really stuck with him, particularly since I think I would say since Samsung United more specifically, and especially since lane swaps were taken out.
Mm.
Um, with IG, I'm just kind of like question mark, and I'm going to ask you for your thoughts on them in a minute. And then JDG, I think they have very clear cut, like incredible strengths, and then very obvious weaknesses as team. What are your thoughts on IG?
Like I can see them bombing out and going on fourth place, and I can see them actually rising above above the challenge and coming second place. I don't personally see IG as the first place. I think recently I had an interview with Perks, and he said that losing Jackie Love hurt the team a lot, and I agree with that.
Hmm.
Like, it is that Jackie Love was like, as a bot laner, he was so talented, and also Jackie Love has contributed in terms of shot calling a lot to the
Hmm.
team, and the
Yeah.
loss of it hurts. Given that both the bot laners Puff and Southwind are relative rookies to the LPL stage, even though they played on the second tier, but
Well, they play on Vici too, which I
yeah.
mean, depending on how you feel about Vici, I guess they could be second tier. Hey,
Yeah, like,
terrible.
and
Anyway.
the the top lane, the meta, I don't think has changed too much. Orange is still gonna be a very high priority pick, and if anything, I would personally think that the weight of the matchups have shifted slightly away from top lane and more towards the
Mhm.
bot lane, which
Yeah.
hurts IG. And all of those teams, looking at them, like Genji or Dragon X, the LCK teams, they can, I would say that they outperform IG at the bot lane. And even when the Shy is having a crazy good day, can IG beat, like, the Genji or Dragon X at the bot lane? And Chobi's a great mid laner. Genji has BDD, who's also a great mid laner. I don't see, even the rookie is an amazing top mid laner. I respect him a lot. Is he going to completely outclass Chobi or BDD? I'm not sure.
I I think Rookie is like if I was building a team, I'd pick Rookie,
Hmm.
but not necessarily for like a 1v1 matchup, Like it would be a lot for a lot of intangibles and just everything from his voice in game to the kind of player he is outside of it, by all accounts, to his individual prowess, to his understanding of the map and how things work and how like team fight micro works and just so many things. But in terms of how IG is performing, I don't think he can
Yeah,
carry IG
carry.
to a victory if they're not working right. And for me, that still comes back to the jungle because I do think they've struggled without someone like Ning in the jungle position.
Mm,
I'm not saying it has to be Ning specifically, but I'm saying I think this team, when they really want to play super dominant, like destroy you in lane comps, I think it really benefits from a jungler who wants to be in those lanes early to
yeah.
set his laners ahead. I don't think Leon has been that person for them, and I don't think even all the way back in week one when they were bringing in him to play Kiana because Ning's Kiana was a woof. Uh, he didn't. I didn't necessarily see that play style from him. So who gets out of this group?
Oh, okay. I did already mention that Dragon X and JDG would outperform Genji for multiple reasons. And so I will put JDG and Dragon X as the two teams that get out of the groups. As of who is gonna go out on first place, yeah, like, they have both. For top lane, I think JDG has a higher end. For the bot lane, I think Dragon X has a higher end. So I'm gonna take a wild guess and say Dragon X comes out first place in the group B, and JDG in the second place.
Yeah. When I look at these teams based on recent performance, I think Gen G can go one of two ways. I would love to see them have like a revitalized like Lid gets to
Mm,
like take over the early game and be really aggressive because I think Lid is really smart about what he does early.
mm,
Um, I would love to see that happen after a coaching change. I think it'd be really interesting for them. However, based on what I saw from them this past split, I actually have to agree. I think Dragon X comes out of this group first. I just
so weird.
I really love them in this meta.
Mm,
Despite the fact that the way we've been talking about them is kind of a more focused IG, which it isn't the case, but I think that could be mistaken just based on the way we've been talking about their
yeah,
laners. Um, and I guess I too will put JDG too. This group is way more difficult for me to call.
yeah.
If an LPL team wins, Which team is it going to be and why?
So I actually made a prediction at APX back at the time when I thought it was gonna be LCK versus LPL format. Because I think that JDG or TES has a weaker matchup to the LCK style compared to IG or FPX, simply given that LCK, even though yeah, LCK play slow has become a bit of a meme than a truth. LCK teams tend to have a bit more structured way of playing compared to LPL, where one team might play drastically different from another team. And because of that, LPL teams also know how to react to different situation faster in more like in improved ways. And JDG and TES, I would say, plays in more standard style. Like perhaps playing side to their lane strengths and bot lane. But given Okay, I have actually shifted my answer to Test, especially given that even though Jingdong Gaming won the whole thing, Test gave them a very close call, and also we have to remember the finals JDG, the finals test we saw. Jackie Love haven't played that many games at that point, and he was already making a notable difference. And if I assume that Test had a bit more time with Jackie Love between now and the finals, I would say that the teamwork has strengthened even more.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is a team that has perfect macro and shot calling, this is a very very terrifying team. Looking at all the lanes and looking at all the mechanical prowess individual players have.
I if if every team is playing to their like to kind of the platonic ideal of like what their identity is, because we talk a lot about identity with LPL teams specifically, because I think that's a great strength of LPL teams, to be quite honest, is they typically really know how they want to play around their players. The top teams do anyway. um and I think this could be a time for top esports to really make a definitive statement about being one of the best teams in the world. I think they had some really costly decision making against JDG in the finals.
Yeah.
I think with more time with Jackie Love, and
Mm,
also, again, like I hate to keep harping on this, but I do think we're going to see more bot side focus going into this tournament, just because that's generally been the trend in the meta, and I think it is only going to continue here. I think top esports, a top esports is playing to the best of their ability. I think is the LPL's strongest team here. Um, I think, oddly enough, I think I know everyone's going to say T1 is the best team here, and I think they probably are. But if Dragon X was playing to like their absolute best ability, and that would require, honestly, it would require, I think, in my opinion, significant improvement from both
pure shit.
Pioshik and Doran.
Mm-hmm.
More Pioshik than anyone, but
Mm.
I'm actually not super high on Doran either. Sorry. I think that like if all things were everyone's firing on all cylinders, playing the absolute best, I would love to see Dragon X take it as well, because I just really love this team. Um, and you can see, I love teams that still make mistakes, but you can see how good they could be, which is
Mm.
probably also why I love a lot of LPL teams. So I mean, I think T1 is probably the best team at this tournament. Um, However, just based on how they played uh, in finals in this current meta. Um, but man, I would love to see Top and Dragon X do well, because I think these are two teams that you just see like flashes of how like absolutely stunning they could be.
This is my probably calling note because we talked about the top LPL team, and I'll agree with you. My top pick for the LCK team is T1, and I also agree with you. I am really fascinated by Dragon X and the potential that team could possibly bring. But given that, I will still pick T1 because if I imagine a best of five between T1 and Dragon X, and if that best of five is played 5 times, I see T1 coming out victorious on 8 of those 10 times. I just simply think that T1 has completely figured out its game plan, and then we don't expect any of its players to like perform less than 60%, which we might expect from Dragon X. So given all those things, even though I also do have high hopes on Dragon X, I would say T1 is the tournament favorite here.
Man, I wish I could see like a JDG because Kanavi, like for as much as I've talked about him farming, he can also play like aggressive early too. I would love to see JDG just come out with like super aggressive early game plan because I think that would destroy T1 actually. If they focus topside and just came out super aggressive, like it's possible. Yeah. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm just like thinking about it. I'm like, man, I'd really like to see that too because I do think T1 have weaknesses. I don't think they're like as peerless as people have made them out to be. I do think, however, to their credit, they have figured out exactly how they want to play. And as we know from the two past Worlds winners from the LPL, that's actually something that's super important at international tournaments. Ashley, is there anything else you wanted to add about any of the LCK teams here?
I wish them luck.
Are you just sitting there LCK win this for the clout?
So I would say one thing. This is a first competitive tournament in a while, and I agree with you. What I love about the LPL is individual teams know how they want to play. JDG knows that they want to play around Kanavi. Tess knows to play around the individual laners. FPX has like the super Doinby roaming everywhere style. IG is doing something. So this time I want
when they're firing all cylinders,
they're doing something.
No more exciting team to watch. But that also depends on Pup and Southwind increasing their play as well.
So what I want to see from LCK, because I see the talent, I see the building blocks there. I want to see Dragon X really play around Chovy and Drafting, refining their own playstyle. I want Diamond Gaming to perfect their own playstyle. I want T1 to continue doing what they love, and I want to see a more refined evolution of Genji. So that's one thing I'm really looking out for in this mid-season cup. LCK teams finding their own unique identity.
That's good, actually. I think it's something that, like, talking to, I know you talked to him as well, but like Yamato Cannon, I know that's something he really wanted to stress too, because people talk about LCK teams like this monolith, that they play really slow. And I think to some extent that's true. I also do think that teams take less risks than LPL teams, and when you decide to take those risks, it does mean that sometimes you're going to look really foolish, but it also means that sometimes you're going to perfect a really strong team identity, and come out the other side like as the best team in the world at the time. So I wish all of my LPL teams good luck. What I really want to see coming out of this, though, is I would love to see like a super hyper aggressive JDG. Now that I mentioned it, I like don't want to let that go because I have seen games where Kanavi is like in lanes immediately, and it's so good. And if he can do that, especially topside with Zoom, like the two of them can just take over an entire match. We are out of time because we have to go to ESPN Trivia Night. I know that we couldn't dive into stuff maybe as like super analytically as we would have wanted to, but thank you so much for joining me for the past
thank you so much for having me
45 minutes. Like I said, your insight is always super valuable, especially since you're talking to these teams a ton. And like I said, I miss you. I can't wait to go back to South Korea again, hopefully sometime in my lifetime.
We miss you too. We'll see you someday, and like I said, you're greatly missed here as Seoul, and I can't wait for the day when we can go to Lowell Park again and grab some hungover soup afterwards.
Yes, let's do it. Thank you so much, chat, for sticking around. And for more League of Legends stuff, we actually have Trivia Night with Freak in 15 minutes, if you guys want to stick around for that. I will post the YouTube VOD of this to Twitter once it gets released. And thank you so much for joining me and Ashley this afternoon or this evening or at 9 o'clock in the morning in Ashley's case. Bye.
Bye, guys.